Now let's start with our morning poem. And those of you who have worked with me for know that I like to begin with a poem, partly to honor my Irish roots, but really, probably more importantly, to emphasize good trance language, good therapeutic language, good generative change language is primarily musical and poetic. Literality is important. It's like money is really important. It's like your personal hygiene. How you look is really important, but it probably isn't a good thing to have it be your primary focus. So literality is important. That's a dog. That's a camera. That's important. But particularly when you need to be in a creative state, you need to hold things, what Eugene Genlin used to say, not as signs, but symbols. And he used to say that the definition of a sign is something that has a fixed invariant meaning, right? So that means if you love me, then you will do X, Y, and Z, right? If somebody's going to love me, they will do X, Y, and Z. And your partner is likely not to do X, Y, and Z, you know? But if you're rigidly holding a map of if you love me, you will do exactly this map, and this map, that's a long road that you're going on. So when you treat something as a symbol, Genlin said, a symbol is something that has multiple contradictory meanings, a number of which cannot be made explicit. Okay? So you take this same image or this same word, and you're sort of holding it more like you would listen to a poem or a piece of art, you know, and you realize each time it's got a different meaning. It's one of the beautiful things about art, right? I mean, you know, I've lived in this house 35 years. I have paintings on my wall that I've had, some of them for 25 years. And, you know, once they're there for 25 years, you don't see them every day. You know, maybe you only notice them once every couple of months. Like you find your eyes resting on that, and it's a painting you've really loved. And you connect to that painting, and you have a different experience of what's in that painting than you ever had before. How many of you recognize that? Or you read a book, you know, I love to read. It's one of my favorite activities. One of the things I like to do now, I've got a few years of reading under my belt. I like to read books that I really love 5 to 10 years later, and to reread a favorite book 5 to 10 years later. It's like, wow, why didn't they say this the first time? You know, why? This is a different book. It's got such different meanings, and in many ways, I mean, it's a way that I always think, if I really like a movie, if I watch it a second time and like it even more. Yeah. How many of you have that experience? So you see in any art representation, you just know that there's infinite possible meanings. And so your connection to it is not literal. Your connection is more poetic and musical. Okay? And in order to change your maps, this is the relationship you need to have with every thought, every verbal thought, every feeling, every behavior that is in your experience. You have to have this curiosity that it has multiple contradictory meanings. And the kiss of death is to lock it into a single meaning. That's called fundamentalism. It's killing, it's destroying humanity. Fundamentalism. Okay? It's also, we'll see, the underlying mechanism for all persistent suffering is that you've got this sort of river of different, of consciousness running through, and at some point you dam the river. So damn you, you block it, you block the chi, okay? And you lock whatever that moment was, stuck in a moment, okay? And that takes you out of life and puts you in this place where you think you're connected to reality, but you're not. You're in this sort of dungeon where you have a fixed map. And there's just tremendous suffering I think we can guarantee will follow from when you are fundamentalist. You know, my dear friend Bill O'Hanlon, he's got a nice Irish wit also. He says, you know, when you think of fundamental, he said, there's no fun and there's no mental. What does that leave you with? Fun? No, duh. So we're trying to treat our fundamentalism every day. So here is a little poem from one of our late great American poets, Mary Oliver, really beloved by many, many people. She died in her 80s a couple years ago. And she lived for most of her adult life in Provincetown, which is at the tip of Cape Cod, which is about 3 hours from Boston. If you go out, if you've ever seen on the map, that sort of tip. And there's a lot of marshland and a lot of nature. And she would go out with her dogs every day and just have these connections with nature. And apparently, as the story goes, she would hide her notebooks and pencils in different trees. And then when she felt this sort of inspiration, she said, which tree? I think I would have just put it in a backpack, but that's what she did. And then she would write these poems. So here's a good poem to me about generative trance. It's called Morning Poem. She says, every morning the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again. And they fasten themselves to the high branches. And the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, it's all that you can do to keep on trudging. There is still somewhere deep inside of you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wants. The earth is exactly what it wants. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning. Whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray.